Today on Broadscast, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Is this a good thing for our women or just a marketing ploy? Stay tuned.
Broad topics, broad minds, broad hosts, but not just for broads. This is Broadscast with Kim Goldman and Jackie McDougall.
Welcome to Broadscast. Hi, Kim Goldman.
Hello, Jackie McDougall.
How are you?
I'm doing swell. I think I'm doing peachy. Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's great. So, as you said earlier, we have two women on the show today who have very opposing views on Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I'm really looking forward to hearing those. Everything's pink. Everything's pink. Pink is everywhere. We're going to talk about that in a bit. So, first up, have you seen any clowns since the last time we talked?
Oh my God, there was a clown sighting in my neighborhood.
Are you serious?
And it was a picture of someone took of the clown that was just like standing near a light pole, just looking out. Like it was so creepy. It was
like gazing off into the distance?
Yeah, but like whoever took the picture, the clown was like looking right at the person taking the picture. It was just freaky.
Wow.
Freakazoid.
So he wasn't doing anything other than contemplating clown life.
Yeah, but dude, that's weird.
Yeah,
that's weird.
That's totally weird. So, God knows we are getting closer to the presidential election. Raise your hand. Good one. Raise your hand out there if you are just ready for this election to be over. Yay! Yes, all of us. Am I right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter. Like, what side you're on at this point, it's I think that this is like so blurry that there isn't even like a Republican and Democrat side anymore. Like people are just like running. Right.
Well, I do have to say what I find interesting is that Facebook is like the laundromat for all of this dirty junk. And so I have noticed that my Facebook page has been a little clean lately of Trump supporters, which the people that were inundating their pages and their news feeds with all their Trump speak are not as vocal anymore. So I'm wondering what's happening.
Yeah,
one way or the other. Like I have a handful of people that I know that they are huge Trump supporters, and I just haven't seen them post anything lately. So I'm wondering what's happening.
Right? Are they still supporting? Or the thing is, like, I can imagine if one were a Trump supporter, that it's not that easy to be public about it. He just, every time he opens his mouth, actually, he doesn't even have to open his mouth anymore. Like, there are so many times he said things on camera in the past, whether the mic was on or hot or behind closed doors, that, he recently, earlier this week came up with this apology, right? So, which is interesting because one, he was recorded behind closed doors with a hot mic with Billy Bush talking about women. And then the other one is he's on camera reading a teleprompter apologizing. So like, which one? And he says that the other one wasn't him. I'm like, that seems weird. So the one that's on camera with a teleprompter, that's you? And I love that he was like, it was over a decade ago. And like, yeah, you were 60, or like, it's not like, and Billy Bush, the same thing. Like, oh, it was 11 years ago or whatever. He was, in his 30s.
Well, what I find, and I think, maybe it was a made up parody tweet. I don't even remember anymore. But, I think there was some kind of comment that like, this is how men talk. And I think, we blow it off, like it's okay because it's locker room conversation, conversation between Billy Bush and Donald Trump on the bus, talking about Nancy O'Dell who's walking by and talking. It was vulgar and it was disgusting. Is there a part of me that says, yeah, men talk like that. Women can be crass and disgusting too. I totally get that. But this is the person that you want to be your president. Like, I'm not saying that anytime it's okay to be that disrespectful and vulgar and disgusting, but this is the person that we're talking about becoming the leader of our country.
Right.
And so I too can separate sometimes how things that get done 20 years ago, 30 or 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when you weren't in a position to run for office. However, his apology was so like, okay, I'm going to say I'm sorry, but it's not as bad as what Bill Clinton did. Like that was his apology, like, it's not as bad as what Bill Cosby does, it's just,
right.
The tit for tat and like the schoolyard BS around it is what I find far more offensive in a way than the comment that he was making, which was obviously disgusting, and it was a showboating, again, I'm not diminishing what he said, but I was just like, your apology is disgusting. Like, just say I'm sorry and be done. I'm sorry for what I said. It was 10 years ago, and I've learned my lesson, and be done.
But but the lesson is there is no lesson, because that's who he is. And the thing is, though, for those people who say this is how guys talk, I'm not offended if he talks about like his conquests, right? He could say whatever he wants with Billy Bush. I don't care. I don't care. He's been on Howard Stern. He's talked about like this woman and that woman, and like that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is his attitude toward women, that because he's famous, that he can grab people. Like, he's talking about sexual assault. First of all, like, right. And how I can't help it. I have to kiss them. Like, okay. And it's so funny because my husband made the point, and I cannot agree more, that like, for some reason, Donald Trump kissing a woman is even more disgusting. Like, right. I'm like, oh my God, get away from me. But it's his attitude toward women that we have absolutely no value other than being his blow up toy. And that he, because he's a powerful man, by the way, not even close to running for president at that time, he can do whatever he wants. And so imagine him as the leader of the free world. It's like, are you kidding me right now? It's just, and there are still people out there who are totally defending him. I mean, I wrote about it on my Facebook page, my personal one, that, we're talking about the daughters, right? And all the worried about like what that will say to our daughters because he doesn't respect women. But, along with my daughter, I have 2 boys. You have a son. I think it's equally important, if not more, to teach the boys how to look at women and respect women and value women, and here's this man, who lives his life like this and absolutely disregards. I mean, he talks about his own daughter being hot, and I mean, he's just so repulsive that I can't even imagine like going into the voting booth and being like, yes, on Donald Trump.
I shudder. I shudder, and I have people that I have arguments with. They're not necessarily wanting to vote for Trump, but they just hate Hillary so much that they're trying to find something redeeming about Trump so that they don't have to vote for Hillary. Yes. And and again, we talked about this ad nauseum on the show because it's been going on for 18 months. But not our show, the politics, of course. I think that, I think that's where we're at, that Hillary may win, not because she's the best candidate between the two, but because people are so grossed out by him. And that's going to be, unfortunately for people, they're going to say, oh, well, you weren't really qualified, but, it's just because Trump was so bad. I mean, I feel like that's going to be what the conversation is going to be shortly after this presidential campaign ends. And Trump, I don't know how he's going to you think he's just going to disappear into oblivion?
I don't know. But, what do you think about like when not only Trump, but all of these other people who are bringing up the fact that, some of the comments were, oh, yeah, I'd rather teach my daughters and sons that, no matter what a guy does, that the woman should stay loyally. And, that Hillary Clinton, a lot of points are about Bill himself, like as if Hillary has any sort of control over her husband or any of us have control over our spouses. But what do you think about that argument that she's also teaching them?
Well, it depends on what your line of thinking is. There's lots of people that believe that you stay in a marriage for better or for worse, and that you work through it and you pray, or you go to your community groups, or would be that you don't leave because your husband or wife cheated on you, that you do whatever it takes to make your marriage work. There are lots of people that believe that. It's not necessarily maybe what I would subscribe to. Right. I think the other part that people are upset with Hillary, though, is not necessarily because she stayed, but it was because she victimized those women that he had affairs with, or that he allegedly had affairs with, and she bullied them into either submission or changing their accusations so that it wouldn't reflect negatively. There are lots of rumors and stories that she targeted some of those people that he had relationships with to make them look bad, as opposed to holding her husband accountable. And so I can appreciate the anger that people have about that, but not necessarily because she stayed. There's millions of women and men that stay in their marriages that are adulterers, and how do we know what their, maybe they had an open marriage. Maybe they had an understanding that in order for them to remain a political dynasty in this country, that they needed to stay together and they would just accept each other's lifestyles. And who are we to judge that? Like,
right.
I don't really care.
But I do notice that, everything that we say about Hillary, and there are plenty of those, stories of her bullying these women, right? Or hiring thugs, as they say. But all of that is hearsay. All of that is speculation. All of that. We don't know the whole story. I mean, there are plenty of stories and maybe, she was not making the right choices, right? So I'm not even trying to like downplay that, but I don't know. That's the whole thing. I don't know. I can suspect, but with him, it's like everything is there coming out of his own mouth.
And he's the one running for president. So when Donald Trump wants to go back and be angry at something Bill Clinton did when he was the governor of Arkansas or in his first round of campaigns or whatever, okay, we did that already. We did that already. Mm-hmm. You are the one currently running for president now, not Bill Clinton. And even though Bill Clinton's married to Hillary Clinton, she didn't do those things that Bill Clinton did. So why he keeps comparing his vulgar, disgusting comments about women to Bill Clinton, I don't get it. I don't get it. Because Bill Clinton's not running for office anymore. Maybe some people actually think that he is in a woman's pantsuit, but
she's not nearly as charming. Let's be honest.
But I just mean that again. Trump, for all the mistakes that he has made in his past, for all the stupid, idiotic things he says presently, I don't understand how people can still get behind him. Even in the vice presidential debate, Pence couldn't defend some of the things that his running mate had said in the past. He just blew past it. He just talked around it. It was brilliant how he did it. But, I don't know. I don't know how people can just get behind that and still support it and not acknowledge that, he's off the cuff. He's cut from a different cloth than the rest of us. But he's got some great ideas. I mean, you don't hear people saying that. It's weird. It's weird.
Well, I mean, even if you take out all of this like sexism and racism and all of the things that make me 100% sure I will not vote for him, he hasn't said anything. Like everybody talks about him being a businessman and that we need a businessman in there. But he doesn't know how to run a country and he doesn't have any ideas that are actually concrete.
He had a tweet a couple of weeks ago that said that I've employed tens of thousands of people. Hillary Clinton has not done one thing to help employment. So that was one tweet that he made, and I'm thinking you haven't created tens of thousands of. You had business and you hired people for that. That's not impacting the country per se in a whole, the way that he was comparing it to Hillary. Then a couple of weeks later, he said that he's employed tens of thousands of people and Hillary's only employed people for the CIA and the FBI. I'm like, oh, so now you're comparing your blue collar workers, which there's nothing wrong with that, but like that's more important and you're placing more important value on that than the CIA and the FBI. Like, and so he keeps changing his tune and I'm thinking, what? Just stop already. Like, stop. It frustrates me because I think it's amazing that he had all those people work for him. Knock yourself out. And a lot of them may have been in China. Who knows? Because you can't believe everything you read. But like to now, diminish the importance of the CIA and the FBI and the jobs that Hillary Clinton created for those two gigantic entities in our country. Like that's not important anymore. Like, right. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
I mean, if anybody's just joining us for the first time, like I have admitted many, many times that I do not, if I have my choice among 5 other people, like Hillary Clinton may not be the person I vote for. You know what I mean? Like she's not my number one. And it's funny because the hashtag I'm with her started and I'm like, I don't think I'll use that. Like I'm likely going to vote that way, but I'm not in support. And the more, that comes out about Trump today was, earlier this week was the first time that I said I'm with her. Like,
right.
It's just gotten so bad that he's pushed me. He's backed me into a corner that I'm like, fine, I'm with her, So let's talk for a second about Nancy O'Dell. So Nancy O'Dell, as you said, was the subject of these crude comments between Donald Trump and Billy Bush.
Right. Right.
Nancy at that time worked at Access Hollywood with Billy and apparently was like walking by the bus that they were on. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So she spoke out a couple days after this broke, saying that she's, politics aside, I'm saddened that these comments still exist in our society at all. When I heard the comments yesterday, it was disappointing to hear such objectification of women. The conversation needs to change because no female, no person should be the subject of such crass comments, whether or not cameras are rolling. Everyone deserves respect no matter the setting or gender. As a woman who has worked very hard to establish her career, and as a mom, I feel I must speak out with the hope that as a society, we will strive to be better. What do you think of that? I mean,
well, listen, I've always been a fan of Nancy O'Dell. I worked with her a very long time ago. She was a board member of an organization that I worked on. I've always found her to be with integrity. She was a classy lady, and she's not wrong. I think that in media, women have been subjected to this kind of commentary for a very long time because it's a man's world out there in media. And I think, she, like she says, she has worked hard to try to break that, those feelings about women and men. And I don't know. I mean, I think that she did the right thing by coming out and speaking, and I think she should keep doing it,
I mean, I could imagine that she would be even more disappointed with her, colleague.
Billy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because, I mean, I find, and we've actually talked about him years ago on the show. I am not a fan. I'll just put it out there. Like, I'm not a fan. And so I find him to be weak and always have, and just kind of a follower, right? So do you think he is just as guilty as Trump in this, or is he just kind of doesn't have a backbone and doesn't know when to speak up for his colleague?
I think both. I think that he had here's my feeling. I've always been someone who has felt very strongly in the bystander component, and he was a bystander in this situation. And so Trump was just going on and on, unprompted, by the way, by Billy Bush. I mean, a couple times Billy Bush made a crack, or he's like, "Oh, Trump," he egged him on a little bit. But I think that Billy Bush had an opportunity to say, "Dude, enough," but I think that it was probably, he was uncomfortable. He was intimidated, and you let the Donald talk. I mean, he always has had this big, huge personality, and I do hold Billy Bush responsible in some ways more because he had an obligation out of respect for his colleague, but just out of just being a man. And I think wasn't Billy Bush married at the time, or not even if he wasn't married, it doesn't matter.
Billy was, but also Donald Trump was married at the time.
Yeah. Well, but Melania, she's been out there talking about, he was offensive, but I forgive him, or I accept his apology. I don't know. I think it goes back to what we said earlier about sending a message to our boys about how to treat and talk and think about women. And that's our responsibility, whether you're a woman or a man, to be a role model for how to treat each other as humans. And I think Billy Bush failed. I think he failed as a man and as a human being in that regard for not sticking up for a colleague and what I'm believing and probably assuming was a friend, because he thought it would be more important to high five.
Right. And this is what happens, if you want to go down to the high school or the college level and things are being said like that and other boys don't have, the ability to speak up or feel like they can't, right? And so this guy's in the locker room and he's saying these things. I mean, because he's not just talking about, it's, again, I'm not necessarily offended by knowing that some guy was talking in a lewd way in the locker room, right? Because I think, look at women when we get together, and it's not like we don't talk like that, but you talk more freely, right, around friends, and it's a fun way to blow off steam, but that's not what he was doing. It was so lecherous and so creepy and so sexual harassment at its finest right there, where it was like, I can do this because I am powerful. And it's that's a problem, And
can you imagine if Hillary Clinton was caught on a hot mic talking like that? I can't even just imagine the words coming out of her mouth, but could you imagine if she was the one that was saying those disgusting and vulgar comments about men? And I can't even imagine. I think that our country would have a coronary.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a lot of people that don't think that what he did was all that bad.
Yeah. Well, there definitely are. Or they feel like they just have to talk about how bad she is, and it's interesting because you mentioned it before, but I mean, isn't the whole like conservative movement, nuclear family, stay together, I mean, I know when I took my vows, it was for better or for worse. And I'm not saying that like how I would respond, but it's interesting that it's conservative people who are like so flip about, oh, and she stayed with him. Like, isn't that what
that's what I'm saying. That's what I said before. Like that. So as far as I'm concerned, it's none of my business. Like, I don't think that makes you a better human because you stayed in a marriage or not. I'm a divorced woman. I'm pretty confident that I'm a good person, even though I'm divorced. Right. So the fact that a party would in some way think that it's better or worse that you were married or unmarried, like that in some way increases your character. I mean, Donald Trump's married 3 times, like, and the Clintons have stayed married and people believe it's a terrible marriage. So what difference does it make? Right. Like, I mean, I don't really care that Donald Trump is married 3 times. I don't care that Hillary and Clinton are in a marriage. Other people view it does not make a difference to me. I don't think it matters how you would hit the nuclear weapon button or not. Like, I think I'm just as sane as a divorced woman as a lot of my married friends are. So I don't think that should have any kind of impact on whether or not you can run the country.
More sane, someone will say you got out of marriage. No, I'm just kidding.
Trust me, baby.
Hey, we have to take a quick break. So hold on. We'll be right back.
Connect with the Broads on Facebook at facebook.com/broadscast.
Welcome back to Broadscast. Hey, Kim, what you eating tonight?
Ooh, Blue Apron. Do they have a theme song? Because I should learn it.
Oh my gosh. I don't think they have a theme song. We should write it. Who are you kidding? Right?
Oh yeah. I'm eating some pasta something or other. I can't remember the name of it, but I have all my ingredients all ready to go because that's the best part of Blue Apron. I don't have to do any shopping. It all comes delivered to my door with perfect proportions for my kid and I in this beautiful recipe card that has everything all outlined for me, and all I got to do is read it.
Right. And it's
fantastic. Yeah.
I love the fact that it's less than $10 per meal. You can get 3 meals free plus free shipping. Right. So if you use blueapron.com/broads, but my favorite thing is the ingredients. And I've talked about that before. They have the highest quality standards for their community of artisanal suppliers. So I love saying that artisanal. But they use family run farms, fisheries, and ranchers. So I think that's kind of cool. Like they have Japanese ramen noodles and Alaskan salmon, wild caught, of course, or like heirloom tomatoes. I just love that I am cooking with ingredients that I truly have never, ever bought at the store before because I didn't know how. I didn't know how to cook with them.
I know. I got leeks sent to me. Yeah. I thought leek was like a whole other thing. Yeah. So I was super excited to have my leeks.
That's awesome. So check out this week's menu. Get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/broads. We will be right back in just a second.
Subscribe to Broadscast on iTunes.
Welcome back to Broadscast. As you know, it's October, and that is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Let me just get into this conversation. We have on the line Erica Elmetz. She's an health and wellness expert, creator of the parenting course Cultivating Conscious Children, author of The Family Guide to Detoxing Your Body and Home.
Okay, but Jackie, don't forget the best part. Not that it's the best part, but Erica, are you like the co-creator of the salad spinner?
I am.
I love that.
You're my idol. You know what? I know it's one of those stories where I don't tell it that often, but I'm starting to have to tell it because it's so fun.
She's trained in clinical nutrition, biofeedback, essential oils, homeopathy, flower essences, color therapy, energy, psychology. You have a BA from Harvard. I mean, you are like rocking the life here.
But we also have Ms. Jessica Gottlieb on the phone, which you've met her a few times on the show. She's founder of Word of Mouth Women, an influencer marketing agency, and a recovering mom blogger. She is badass, opinionated, and we love her. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. I'm also a huge fan of you guys, which is probably the only thing worth mentioning.
Well, you are the one. So let's, breast cancer awareness. Pink is everywhere. It's on the football field. It's in our grocery stores. It's, but is that really, are we bringing awareness to a disease, or I'm curious to get your feedback. Jessica, why don't we start with you?
Well, the October makes me bananas. And you won't find a pink ribbon on a banana because, it didn't give you cancer to begin with. So they only seem to put ribbons on, I don't know, Frito-Lay and Diet Coke, which, is probably going to get you there anyhow. But here's my main outrage with October is that it's this excuse for marketers to talk about boobs. And let me tell you, I spend a good portion of my day looking for pretty people to make things look good. So I understand the appeal of a great rack. But let's not pretend like we care about women. This whole breast cancer thing is just an opportunity to talk about boobs, which, by the way, are the first thing to go when you're diagnosed with breast cancer. Everybody's aware, the party's over, get rid of the pink ribbon. And the notion that somebody who has had breast cancer should have to suffer through, I just saw an ad. Oh, some idiot blogger had a carton of milk, of course, in a plastic container that was like, save the jugs. And you know what? How about we concentrate on saving the woman? Because those breasts are about to be amputated for a lot of people. And that makes me bananas.
So, Jessica, do you think that if the campaign was Save the Woman, that you would feel less eked out by the October Breast Cancer Awareness Month? If it was the campaign?
Absolutely. It's a really anti-woman message. It's the whole message is we care deeply and profoundly about your breasts. Period. But the other thing is that, we can't mistake it for money that's going to research. We can't mistake it for money that's going to prevention. Awareness, we're done. If the objective is awareness, then we're finished, and it's okay for things to have a lifespan. We no longer fund research for smallpox because smallpox is gone. Breast cancer, 100% of Americans are aware. So it's over.
Erica, what do you think?
Well, I got to agree with Jessica from the standpoint that this month literally drives me bananas as well, but it's for different reasons. The awareness of pink and breast cancer awareness, like Jessica said, yes, we're aware. However, so much money, so many resources being devoted to quote unquote early detection, when instead I believe wholeheartedly that those resources need to be developed, dedicated towards prevention. There's so much we can do to prevent breast cancer in the first place, and none of the conversation is going to that. I mean, I think it was Susan G. Komen so far since its inception has raised over $3 billion. Their revenues are over $3 billion. Most of that goes to admin costs. Most of it goes to salaries. Very little of it actually goes to research. But guys, and they keep talking about, well, if we find a cure, then we can actually, if we find the cause, then we can get a cure. But we already know what causes cancer. We know it's a combination of a multitude of factors. It has to do with toxins, environmental, the toxins in the food we put in our bodies, has to do with emotions and stress, estrogen dominance, and nutritional deficiencies. These all contribute. None of the conversation and none of those dollars are going to that. And that's what drives me nuts. I have people around me that are passing away from breast cancer, fighting it now. And it's like, I want to tell them and scream, like, don't put any of your money towards that because it's not helping. So that's what drives me crazy.
I know for somebody who has the BRCA gene, which gave me an 87% chance of having breast cancer in my lifetime, that everybody would say to me, I ended up having what I didn't know when I went into surgery, but I had a preventative double mastectomy. I didn't know. I had a lump, so I didn't know. I went into surgery like I may or may not have cancer. They couldn't do a biopsy on it. So anyway, but the long story short is everybody would say to me, well, now they can find it early. They can find it early. And I remember talking to my sister about it, who also has this gene. Like, what about not getting it? Like, I agree with you in that we don't necessarily educate to prevent people from getting cancer, but try to raise money for those who do. I think so. You could eat perfectly, I think, have no stress and all that, and possibly still get breast cancer.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely.
Go ahead.
Definitely left. And I'm going to jump in just because they have genetics is certainly a part of it. And this BRCA gene conversation is a super important one. It's highly emotional and sensitive for many people. Yet they have found that only 10% of cancers are based on genetics. There's so much study in the field of epigenetics around just because you have the genetic mutation does not mean at all that you will necessarily get it. It doesn't mean you won't. Because certainly you can do everything perfectly and still get cancers because we were just bombarded constantly with environmental toxins. But the conversation, there's so much that can be, just because you have the gene certainly doesn't mean that you get it.
That's very true. And I see some families who they have the gene and hardly anyone gets it. And I see other families, they have the gene and like mine, my mom and her two sisters all were gone by the time they were 52 years old. So, there are definitely, I don't know enough about genetics. I don't claim to be an expert, but I do know that some families with this gene see a lot more cancer than others.
Do you think, though, I mean, moving, I don't want to dismiss the genetic part of the conversation, but I think in general, like when you have months that are dedicated to these causes and like, domestic violence month, which is also the month of October, do you feel like it sort of makes it a little cheeky, like kitschy, to everything's pink and then the next month it's not anymore? So does that mean we're not supposed to think about it anymore? We're not supposed to donate? We're not supposed to have conversation about it? Do you think it really does promote conversation or just... I think we've all
become so immune to it that there's no conversation around any of it anymore. I just, you're just, and every day, if you ever saw a publicist calendar and saw every day as, it's National Hot Dog Day, it's National Ice Cream Day, it's National Poodle Day. Right. Nobody cares anymore. It used to just, become a way for people to kind of pitch media and to, kind of do these takeovers. But, here we are, like, nobody does anything except for roll their eyes at this point when you see a pink ribbon.
But, it's funny that you say that because I don't necessarily agree. I think there are a lot of people who use this month to show their support or if they've been through it, some of them feel like this is their their ability to kind of talk about where they've been. And so do you see anything positive about this being the whole pink thing, either of you?
I do see certainly something positive from it, from the standpoint of awareness, the sense of community. Together we can do so much. And the fact that this is a highly emotional topic for so many people, but it also harnesses the power of connecting and the collaborative. I just think that the efforts and the money that's raised are all redirected in the wrong direction.
So
and the money that you're raising, when Yoplait yogurt takes their bucket of chemicals and slaps some pink on it and is like, we're going to give, a penny for every yogurt purchased. Of course, in the fine print, it says up to $20,000. And it's like, they don't need your penny to get there. These are minuscule amounts of money that most companies are giving. As far as their bottom line goes.
So do you think that Yoplait, for example, slaps a pink ribbon on there so that I feel good about my purchase?
Correct. So that all things being equal. So if you're looking at Yoplait and then you're looking at something like Horizon that's edible, that you'll pick the Yoplait.
Right.
And I completely have an axe to grind because it makes me bananas. And I have to say I don't see most of it because most of the most egregious products are in aisles that I don't usually find myself in at the grocery store. But to have known carcinogens swaddled in pink as an infant, which I don't even, and the color too is like, is a little crazy making, is profoundly offensive. And people should take note of that. You don't get to give me a bunch of chemicals that create illness, obesity, cancer, and heart disease, and then say, oh, we're going to give, a penny to breast cancer awareness. And have everything somehow be okay. This isn't.
Well, I guess for me, I mean, I used to work for Pallotta Teamworks, and we used to raise money for the breast cancer awareness walks, the 3-day walks, which partner with Susan G. Komen, and AIDS research. And I always was like, we give so much money to research, but yet we still have this epidemic. So I'm sort of like where you are with Erica, that like, why is all the money going to research? Like and I know that's terrible because I get that we need research, but for all the money that we've been raising for all of these years and we're not any closer to figuring out how to cure it, I'm curious. Like, I sometimes find myself believing like some of the conspiracy people that think that like it's weird. I'm like, what's wrong with me? I'm a conspiracist. But like, I sit here and I think about all the, the pre-screening and all the outreach and the things that, we heard about this past week. I think there was a 9-year-old girl that found herself with breast cancer. I wonder if, like Erica said, that the money's not going to the right use. Like, I think since 2009, the NFL and their catch a throw or catch a pass day or whatever, they've raised $15 million to go to the American Cancer Society. And I'm like, but wait, is that to breast cancer research or is that to the American Cancer Society? So therefore that $15 million is spread out amongst all of our cancers. Like, I'm just confused. I just feel like where did it all go?
Yeah, Kim, to your point, that assumption means that you're assuming that there isn't already things that people can do that are highly effective. So that's the number one thing. I mean, in the 30 years since this started, the Breast Cancer Awareness Month started by the company that manufactures chemotherapy drugs. Most people don't know that, but they wanted to increase early detection, meaning get your mammogram so we can detect your cancer earlier so we can sell more of our drugs. That has had major repercussions from the standpoint of false positives, high false positives. It creates fear. We all know fear and stress make a huge difference in whether you are susceptible and can come down with disease. And there's so many things out there that are that doctors and other practitioners are using with patients with high success rates, yet those are the things that are not covered by insurance and they're not covered by mainstream. So there's things that are being done. I can tell you numerous documentaries that are great to watch, but the information's out there, Kim, and that's what makes me even more crazy about it, because it's not like it's this big mystery we still need to solve. Just ask around, it's there.
Well, the other thing is the growing numbers of breast cancer is a direct result of the growing definition of breast cancer. So, we now have a stage 0 breast cancer, which to me would indicate that possibly you will have breast cancer. However, if you are a cancer marketer, you include those numbers in the numbers of women who have breast cancer. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a terrifying diagnosis or that it doesn't require treatment, and it may or may not. Doctors do not agree on that at all. But to include stage 0, which is a diagnosis that did not exist a number of years ago, shows an alarming spike in breast cancer, and again creates more of a frenzy around it.
And the idea too, though, that the recommendation of getting a mammogram, that actually increases your risk of dying from breast cancer because of the ionizing radiation. It's a known fact. Nobody's arguing that.
Who knows that?
It's documented all over the place. There's lots of different books about it, lots of different researchers. But for example, one mammogram is the equivalent ionizing radiation of 1,000 chest X-rays. And and ionizing radiation is carcinogenic. So they're screening people early on.
Would the AMA agree with you? Because this sounds very sort of non-traditional.
I don't know specifically whether the AMA would agree with it, but you can just look up the dosages and mammograms causing cancer. That's actually not, I don't believe that fact is debated anymore from the standpoint that it's increasing your risk. In fact, one of the top researchers in breast cancer, I was listening to an interview with him earlier, and he says that if you're getting regular mammograms, I don't want to misstate the number, but it's something like you're increasing your risk of actually dying from it because of the radiation factor.
Well, there have been experts, for the past 5 years who have actually warned against getting mammograms. But what how far would the cancer get, Erica, if we didn't have the mammograms? Wouldn't we have to then find it in self-detection, and at that point it's bigger than it would have been?
Yeah. So mammograms are one method of detection. Not any one method is perfect. There are other methods, though, that are not going to be increasing your risk of gaining cancer, and actually can detect breast cancer years and years before a mammogram would. By the time cancer is detectable by a mammogram, there have been cancer cells growing for maybe 8 to 10 years. And there's other methods that are actually more effective that aren't going to increase your risk of cancer and catch it way earlier. So if the goal is early detection, we don't need to be giving early detection when by the time it's detectable on a mammogram, oftentimes it's too late. So there's things like self-exam. A lot of breast cancers are found by self-exam or by a partner. There's something ultrasound. So mammograms as well they're called 52% sensitive, which means about half of the women who do a mammogram, it doesn't even catch the breast cancer. Whereas ultrasound is about 80% sensitive. So ultrasound's a better method. And again, no method is perfect. So if you can do a combination, there's something called thermography, which is heat mapping of the body. And they can tell years ahead of time if there's an imbalance in the way that something might be forming in the body. So if we're really talking about early detection, we need to be having the conversation and donating funds to having people do those types of screenings instead of one that by the time you do it, it's too late. It's not always too late. I'm not saying that absolute.
Well, the unfortunate part about all those extra tests is that they're not covered by insurance.
Yep.
And so, I mean, I know I ended up with the fat old bill that my insurance didn't cover when I had to do something beyond the traditional mammogram. And I was like, wait, I thought I was covered because this is, I mean, I don't understand all the things about Obamacare, but I ended up with a fat bill, because I couldn't. I had to go beyond what they were suggesting.
And that's where our resources need to go.
But let's look at our healthcare system. We can sit here and talk about all these other ways, but who's going to pay for that? How are we going to get any testing? I mean, I feel like,
Well, that's what Erica, I think, is saying, that some of the money, rather than it going to research, that some of that should be, go to offset some of these costs that are outside of our control if we're trying to have early detection.
Right. So I want to ask both of you, if you could rewrite, not abolish Breast Cancer Awareness Month, how would it look? Jessica, let's start with you.
It would look like Shannon Doherty's Facebook feed.
So the realistic, raw.
The realistic, because, and the thing is too, the whole notion that women are somehow supposed to fight cancer is an absurdity. The only women that can fight cancer are scientists. We're here. And I'm sensitive to this because I have a chronic disease, and people are always like, "Oh, be a warrior," and it's like, no, you know what? It's not necessarily up to me to fight. It's up to me to live my life, to follow the best medical advice that I can get. And the people who need to do the fighting, the trenches, belong to the scientists that are working on the preventions and working on the cures and doing the research. And we need to let off the gas on these women and men too, and really just go, you know what? This is going to be one of the hardest years of your life. How can I support you? Period. End of story. And to stop pretending like they've, that their attitude is going to take their cancer away. They're allowed to not feel good about the fact that they're living with cancer that year, or those 2 years, or those 20 years.
Right. So you think that it should just be honesty and raw and, let people tell their real stories and not, the NFL is a prime example.
If people didn't see, rah, hooray, we're cancer warriors. And if people saw mastectomy photos, if people saw women with hair loss, women in bed, women who can't get out of bed, women who get skeletal near death because they have to nearly die before they get to live, then the women around us would get very, very serious about prevention. It's hard to get very serious about prevention when all we're doing is saving tatas.
Okay.
Right.
Erica, what do you think? How would you rewrite Breast Cancer Awareness Month?
I would turn it to Breast Cancer Prevention Month, which in fact there's a movement, I believe it's February, that is now deemed Cancer Prevention Month. And I would take the awareness is there, but there's so much information out there. There's many people that are working on helping many patients, and nobody hears about them. In fact, there's a great documentary called Brzezinski, the movie, about a guy who has helped with his anti-neoplastons, and they've helped so many people with all these cancers that were on their deathbeds. Yet he gets, he gets persecuted for doing all these things, and it's a crazy story. But I would dedicate every single bit of fundraising money, do the walks, and every bit of that going towards educating the public about all the things that we can do to help, which means stop spraying the pesticides around my daughter's school so the grass looks good. The kids are getting exposure. Stop breathing in the stuff that you're spraying in the air. Stop putting carcinogens in our personal care products and giving them to babies. There's just so much. Stop putting processed things into our foods. Like, start eating the way that we used to eat. There's and people. In fact, I'm not donating any money to any Susan G. Komen. I feel like a jerk when my friends ask me hey, will you sponsor me on the walk? And I say, heck no. But you know what I am doing? I'm dedicating my time and my expertise to educating people about cancer prevention. I'm doing a local talk here next week where I'm going to be talking all about the ways that we can shift our focus to all the things we can do to empower us rather than put us into fear.
But when it comes to, the world we live in, right? The technology, the grocery store, all of it, like, how could we possibly become more educated when we're constantly bombarded with mixed messages and being told that things are great for us that are actually poison? As far as let's go back to Yoplait or to, any of those other grocery items that we're convinced that they're like fighting the fight. So, we live in an area where people are educated about their food, right? I mean, we all live in California. So we're very aware of food and it's just a very different lifestyle, right? From some of the other states. What happens when you are in a state where, you're trying to make, or in a place where you're trying to make ends meet and you're buying canned ravioli or, how do we teach them? Like, it's easy for us to all sit here who we all, live comfortably enough and we have access to the farmer's market probably within, 2 miles.
Listen, canned food isn't necessarily a terrible thing. And frozen food, is not a terrible thing. And, people do live in parts of the country where growing, the growing season isn't all year round. But yeah, of course we have systemic problems. We have like corn and soy subsidies that have made potato chips and, I don't even know what everything in a bag is so inexpensive because those farmers aren't surviving off of farming. They're surviving off of subsidies, and we have an excess of it, and it's a good, cheap filler for the food industry. And I don't have an answer to that. And I also don't think for a minute that I'm going to be able to raise teenagers who aren't going to dive headfirst into a bag of Oreos at least once in their life. But a heightened awareness of it, and if you can get the things in your home to all be good choices, so that, if you do want to have that kind of garbage food, that means you have to get up on your own 2 feet and walk and go find it somewhere, is one good start. But poverty is a health issue, and it is expensive on your body to be poor. And we know that to be true, and we know that we have food deserts, and we know that it's expensive to eat well. We also know from the Great Recession that we can all get very kind of spunky and plant our victory gardens, and that was very fashionable for a year or two when we were all losing our jobs.
Well, but Erica, you come from a place of education. Like, how are you educating people who don't necessarily have the resources to grow their own vegetables or head on down to the farmer's market? Like, what would you tell them as far as preventing cancer and knowing what to eat and not falling for the gimmicks like the pink labels?
Well, there's a couple factors relating to that, Jackie. First off, I find that in people's health journey, most people don't actually start paying attention to this stuff until they have a real situation. I mean, that's when I've seen people really start opening their eyes. So until the pain is great enough, they're just going to keep doing what they're currently doing. And yes, healthy food, organic food, all that stuff is more expensive, but it is darn expensive to be sick. And that's where I'm saying some of the funding from all of this fundraising should be towards education for areas that can't afford these things. You know, and besides just the food, I mean, there's a lot you can do to minimize your toxic intake, the toxic load on your body without having to necessarily spend money. It means, you know, how do you clean your house? I mean, there's so much that can be done. It's a multifaceted approach, but in my experience, you know, people are going along with their life. Everything's fine. They're busy. They want to sit down and eat their, you know, junk food and watch TV all day. But the moment that they have a family member or they themselves are diagnosed with something, that's when they have a wake up call and they start looking. So that's where my passion is. I mean, I'm focused on, you know, hey, everyone knows people affected with this horrendous disease. Now let's talk about what we can do before it gets to that point.
Well, you know, maybe what Jessica was saying as far as like showing the reality of illness kind of goes a long way in people seeing, because if they are seeing the, you know, the rah NFL wearing pink and this and that, you know, those cancers don't seem all that scary, and we don't have to make changes in our lives until it actually affects us at home.
There have been attempts to do that, though. When you see articles or advertising campaigns with the women that show, you know, their mastectomies, and people are like, oh, I don't need to see the scars. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, I don't know that we're a country that is able to see that and not be offended. I mean, and be
okay. It's okay to offend people. They should be offended.
I'm with you, but I'm with you. Like I sometimes forget when I see the, you know, the teddy bear in the pink ribbon. Like it doesn't weigh on me the same way it does like you when I saw Sharon Doherty with her shaved head, or when I see those images of women who are brave and they stand out, you know, showing what they've been through and their battle scars. I mean, we don't get offended when we see people in war, you know, with their amputee legs, but we're a woman, you know, with a mastectomy, we get all freaked out. And I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what's interesting about that, Kim, is that there's a huge, so we all know about the placebo effect, right? You think something's going to work and it works, and you've given a sugar pill and all that. There is something opposite of the placebo effect, and there's a really great book I highly recommend, written by a medical doctor, called Mind Over Medicine, and she writes all about the documented studies done on the placebo effect. But there's something on the opposite side of the fat in science called the nocebo effect. So that means if you're given bad news, you're given a diagnosis, you're told you're going to have a horrible life, guess what? You actually will have the opposite, in fact, develop disease. I mean, there's examples of people who, for example, there was a guy who got I think it was a X-ray or something of his lungs, and they found a spot on his lungs, and the doctor's like, gives him the news, you know what, you've got cancer, you're gonna die within whatever amount of time. The guy was dead within 2 weeks. Well, when the family was cleaning out the home and going through like cleaning up all the estate and all that stuff, they found that about 30 years prior, there was a doctor that had done an X-ray or scan of the lungs, and that spot was there 30 years prior. Yet the moment he's told he's going to die because he has cancer, he's dead within 2 weeks. Coincidence? I don't know. So there's lots to be said about the fear factor. That's why I'm really all about empowering. The more that we get empowered, the more that we feel great, that has a huge impact.
Right. Well, but, you know, the guy did have cancer for 30 years, so I don't know.
It was a small spot. But, like, let me tell you this. There's another study that was done where they actually took people who were cancer patients, and they in the control group, they gave them chemo. They said they're going to give them chemotherapy. And in the control group, they injected them with saline, so not chemo. And
I don't believe that for a minute. I can't imagine for one single second that study existed, that cancer patients would have been denied chemotherapy.
And in the study, the 30% of the people that got the saline lost their hair. This is, I can get you the information. It's fine. It's documented. This is just, again, one of many examples. But my point is just that has a big effect. So when we want to impact this disease, and stress and emotions are a huge contributing factor, we need to be talking about empowerment versus fear. So, I appreciate you having me on and really talking about this, because this is a hard conversation to have. I'm always the one that's like, that I bite my tongue a lot of times, and I don't want to, but I do, just because it is a sensitive topic. So thanks for bringing it into the forefront.
We'll be right back after this.
Check out the Broads on Instagram at Broadscast.
Thank you so much to our guests, Erica and Jessica. I think it's a really important conversation, and I learned some things today. How about you, Kim?
I did learn some things. I learned that I'm not as smart as I thought I was about genetics and all those things. But I did learn a lot of interesting things about mammograms and how to take better care of myself and how to be more part of the conversation than just a money giver.
Right. Well, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.
You are listening to Broadscast. For more from the Broads, head to broadscast.com.